Hello, Brooklyn Book Festival. Welcome to the Brooklyn Book Festival's YA Out Loud program. My name is Stephan Lee, author of K-Pop Confidential, which just came out a couple weeks ago. And today I'll be moderating our conversation about secrets and lies with our panel of powerhouse YA authors. And we will be discussing fear, deception, and the lengths characters will go to keep some truths hidden. And our panel is Karen McManus, Rory Power, and Camryn Garrett. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
So great to see your beautiful shining faces. So I'm going to do that highly awkward thing that we do on these where I talk about you while you sit there and listen. But anyway, I'll start with the order I see you guys. So Karen M. McManus. Karen M. McManus is the #1 New York Times, USA Today, and international bestselling author of One of Us is Lying, Two Can Keep a Secret, and One of Us is Next. Her 4th novel, The Cousins, will publish in December 2020. So soon.
Soon.
Her work has been translated into more than 40 languages worldwide. Karen lives in Massachusetts and holds a master's degree in journalism from Northeastern University, which she mostly uses to draft fake news stories for her novels. And I must say, to great effect. Welcome.
Thank you.
Next, we'll have Camryn Garrett. Camryn Garrett is the author of Full Disclosure and was born and raised in New York. When she was 13, she was selected as a Time for Kids reporter, where she interviewed celebrities like Warren Buffett and Kristen Bell. In 2015, she was named as one of MTV's 8 inspiring teens using social media to change the world. And in 2019, she was named one of Teen Vogue's 21 Under 20 and a Glamour College Woman of the Year. Camryn is also interested in film and is a student at NYU's Tisch School of the Arts and is a proud advocate of diverse stories and writers. Or in other words, Camryn Garrett is way farther along than any of us at her age. And last but very far from least is Rory Power. Rory Power is the New York Times bestselling author of Wilder Girls and Burn Our Bodies Down, and hot off the presses, her 3rd novel, The World Ends Here, previously referred to as The Ice Book, is coming in fall 2021, affectionately referred to as The Ice Book. She grew up in New England, where she lives and works as a crime fiction editor and story consultant for TV adaptation. She received a master's in prose fiction from the University of East Anglia. So after all that, welcome. And for this conversation, we're going to focus on One of Us is Next, Full Disclosure, and Burn Our Bodies Down, all of which are available to purchase through the links that you're seeing. So please buy them. And they threw in my book in there too. So please buy that too. So for the first question, I feel like we should just start with kind of the main central secret in each of your books. Which I guess when you talk through those, it's basically a summary of your novel because, secrets are so central to all of them. So Karen, can we start with you? Can we talk about One of Us is Next, what it's about and tease what the central secret is?
Yeah, sure. So One of Us is Next is the sequel to One of Us is Lying. And it takes place just about a year after that book concludes. And it features 3 new protagonists, but they all have ties to the original 4. And in the year since the events of the first book, Bayview hasn't quite gotten back to normal. There's been these little attempts at recreating what Simon had created, but no one is successful until an anonymous truth or dare game launches. And in this game, if you refuse to play or if you choose truth, one of your secrets is revealed. And if you choose dare, you're given a challenge. And at first, seems like, why wouldn't you choose the dare? Because the challenges are kind of fun, but then they turn deadly. And our 3 protagonists have to kind of band together and figure out what's happening. At the same time, they have to deal with their own secrets having been revealed because they are part of the game.
It's so good. Rory Power, how about you?
Hi, I'm Rory. I wrote Burn Our Bodies Down, which came out in July. It's about a girl named Margot who has grown up with just her and her mom in a small Nebraskan town. She doesn't really know anything about her family or where she came from, but she really wants to. And one day she finds a postcard with her grandmother's phone number written on the back, and she uses that to track down her extended family, so to speak, we'll say that. And she discovers some secrets in her family tree, some things about her roots that she ends up wishing she had not known at all, because it's not a great time for her, for anyone at all. Like, it's just a bad day. But yeah, it's really about sort of the patterns that we build in our families and the way we treat each other, and the legacies of the generations that came before us and how they impact us now. And also, I am so sorry, my cat just did a front handspring and made a very loud noise. So if you heard that, that was her.
We didn't. She soft landing.
Oh my God, I'm gonna tell her.
Skills.
9 out of 10.
She has professional ability.
Camryn, how about your book?
My book's called Full Disclosure, and it's about a teen girl named Simone who starts at a new school, and she's trying to keep a secrets and lies. Her secret is that she's HIV positive, and she's trying to keep this a secret from the rest of the school. But when she starts dating a popular boy, she receives anonymous messages threatening her and telling her that she has to reveal a secret or else. Don't they?
Yeah. No, but Camryn, what I love, one of the many things I love about your book, but kind of like the way you presented the secret, is it's not a secret to the reader because, you know, it's presented right away. And I feel like that was great because it, you know, didn't, you know, sensationalize or otherize it to the reader, but like we were still like on the edge of our seats, even though we knew. Which kind of brings me to the first question, which is a craft question. So as the author of these books, you already know most of the secrets to your novel as you're writing them. So how do you keep the twists or like, you know, the surprises as surprising to yourself, or gauge how surprising they might be to your reader when you yourself already know the outcome? So Karen, do you have any tricks for that?
Bold of you to assume I know the outcome. Sometimes I don't, you know, that's part of the fun of writing. In One of Us Is Next, I outlined it before I started, and all the way through to the end in terms of like, you know, what's the final reveal? Who are the antagonists? What's the resolution? And then when I started writing, I got about 3 chapters in, maybe 4, I don't want to spoil it, but I came across a character who had some potential that hadn't really occurred to me as I was outlining. And that changed a lot in the book. So I think some of it is just being open, you know, to where your characters take you. But even when I do know, what I try to do is put my reader's hat on, you know, my mystery reader hat, and think like, how would I be reacting to this kind of information right now? You know, what would I be assuming, and how can I maybe play around with that and hopefully confound it?
And Rory, how about you?
Yeah, I am also in the camp where I don't always know. With the book that I just turned in a revision of, The World Ends Here, and I did not know the ending, and my editor and I had agreed, like, just don't even worry about it. You'll figure it out when you get there. So I don't always know. But for Burn Our Bodies Down, it was important for me to know and to work out exactly what my main character would reasonably understand at each point. So there was a lot of like charts of like what's happening and what she learned, and then recharting it because I got it wrong the first time, and then like writing half the book and being like, well, okay, all that's wrong, let me try again. Like for me, it's a lot of trial and error, but also like cutting yourself a little bit of slack, because I feel like once you're working on a book so much, it's just really impossible to put yourself in that reader headspace where you're like, I've never encountered any of this before. Like, it's just so hard to keep it fresh. So I do try and remind myself of that. The further I get into it, I'm like, you know what's coming. They won't. It relax a little bit, not too much, but
it's way better than you probably think, you know.
That's always my philosophy. I don't know if that's great. Like, and I'm constantly being like, relax.
How about you, Camryn?
Yeah, like Rory, it's a lot of trial and error. This is the only book so far that I've written that has a mystery element, and it's because I'm not good at it. And the first draft, yes, my agent got like 3 chapters in, and she was like, I know like there's no, you didn't even try. So I went through a lot of trial and error, changing not who it was, but like trying to throw the audience off and trying my best. Try
Yeah.
try your best.
No, those red herrings. And I feel like, when you are trying to surprise the reader, there's so many lies that like the characters tell, but you yourself as an author have to tell. But yeah, let's get into how to lie. So there are so many lies in your novels in the best way, but there are nuanced ones where like not even narrators know they're lying, or more obvious ones, or situations where the reader knows someone's lying, but the characters don't. But like, how do you write a great lie? And do you have any go-to writer tricks to indicate a character's lying? Although maybe that's telling too many tricks of the trade. Rory, how about you? Let me start.
I think for me the trick is to make sure, like if I want the reader to know something but my main character to not, or it to be a lie that another character is telling the main character but they believe it, I think the key for me is really in that main character and in their personality and the work that you put into developing them and making sure you know what kinds of things they want to believe are true. So for Burn Our Bodies Down, Margot, the main character, what she wants more than anything is like for her family to exist and to be part of something. So when other characters tell her like everything's fine, you can just totally chill out with your family, like it's all good, she's like, okay, that sounds great. I have no reason to question that because you're giving me what I want. So I think knowing your character really well so that you can build things that they are going to be like specifically designed to believe is the key for me anyway.
Yeah. And how about you, Camryn?
I just lie a lot in real life, or I used to. I don't anymore. I wrote this when I was still in high school, so I was very good at lying. And I feel like probably taking like part of the truth and changing it a little bit is probably the easiest way. I feel like everyone says that though, but something that's true and then transferring it to a different person or molding it a little bit so that it works for what you want. That was kind of vague, but I also don't want to give spoilers.
No, that makes total sense. And I also feel like in real life, when you tell lies, it's so much harder to keep track of. And I feel like that's true with characters too, when they're like,
yeah, like
they say
tons of notes and trying to make sure that this line lines up with this lie and maybe it doesn't for plot reasons, and it's confusing.
Yeah. And Karen, there's a lie a minute or a lie a page.
There really is. I like to give people, multiple things that they're hiding, so that when they are lying to the reader knows they're being shady for some reason, and you can show that in lots of ways, the way that they're speaking, their physical reactions to things. So they know something's up, but they don't necessarily know what that is. And when one of the smaller lies is revealed later, you might think, okay, that's it. Now I can trust them. Oh, but you can't, because there's more to come. So that's probably my favorite thing to do, is to just give people a ton of secrets and let them drip out throughout the book.
Yeah. And I also just, like, whenever I was reading your books, I really thought about what lies or needing to lie said about a character and like how they have to go about doing it, or the secrets that they keep. Because like when I was a kid and I heard people say, oh, I have no secrets, or I tell my parents everything, I was like, like, because it made me think that, oh, like if you don't have anything to hide, like, as like a gay Asian American kid, I had tons of secrets. But like, do you think there's like a link between a character's need for secrets and maybe their privilege or lack thereof? Camryn, why don't we start with you on this one?
Yeah, I feel like for some people, especially, there are lies that are hard not to tell, even to yourself, if that makes sense, especially thinking about queerness. And I feel like, especially with my main character, she sort of talks herself into things. And she's like, well, I can't be queer because I only like this girl one time. We only kissed like twice. Like, that doesn't count. Instead of like tricking yourself into believing certain things. And even with my main character, she has really supportive parents, but she doesn't tell them everything, because I don't think most people tell their parents everything. Right. I find that really odd. Especially since, we're writing coming of age stories and YA stories, and I feel like there's a lot that you might not want to divulge necessarily right away to your parents.
Definitely. And Rory?
I definitely agree about queerness, especially, and particularly at the age that we're writing about. The relationship to queerness is not always so cut and dry. I mean, it isn't necessarily that way when you get older either, but like, especially when you're starting to figure it out, I think there's a lot that is kept private about that, whether it's out of fear or out of like doubt. But I also think, like you talked about having a healthy relationship with your parents or not. And I think being able to share freely with your parents about anything without any worry of a particular response or becoming unsafe is certainly a privilege, a wonderful one. But it's not necessarily the case for everybody. So that was something that I wanted to write about in Burn Our Bodies Down, was sort of the way that children in emotionally abusive households can isolate themselves from their parents and sort of create specific versions of themselves that are like more palatable or like easier to handle, because that's what makes things better. So I think definitely like the idea of sharing with your parents is not necessarily going to be something that everybody can relate to. And there's a lot of privilege at work there that's definitely worth examining.
Yeah. And Karen, I feel like you deal with like large casts of characters, and they really run the gamut when it comes to things that they can hide, related to who they are in the world. So is this something that you also think about when you're writing your characters?
I do, yeah. I mean, my characters have varied relationships with their families and with their friends. So for some people, they're telling lies or keeping secrets because they don't want to face consequences, or because they want to be perceived a certain way. But for others, it is that issue of not feeling safe with the truth. And that does come from relative privilege between the characters.
Yeah, definitely. And another craft question. This is just something I'm just like curious just to like learn from the three of you, but and I won't really ask anyone first or anything, but just like chime in if you have any thoughts. But like, how do you use chapter endings as like mini reveals of secrets and lies? Like, I think with all of your books, like, if every chapter ending, there's like at least some really great reason to turn the page, whether it's subtle or a huge bomb. But like, how much do you think about chapters, chapter lengths, and how you end them?
I usually don't think about it. I feel like I'm just like a nightmare, because I just write what I want and then my editor is like, what is this? But I usually just leave it where it feels right. So like a lot of times there is like a natural sort of cliffhanger or something that I think that the reader will like turn the page with. And sometimes it just ends and my main character is like, wow, now I'm sad. And I'm hoping the reader will continue reading. This wasn't a very helpful answer.
No, hey, now I'm sad is like a good, it's a change, it's a good reason to keep going.
It's true.
How about you, Rory?
I'm in a similar way where like it's mostly just gut instinct, or it's like I hit a moment and I don't know what happens next, so I just stop. And then the next day I'm like, okay, new document. Let's see what happens. But I think, yeah, you mentioned length as well. And I feel like that's a question I see sort of tossed about a lot on Twitter, like in like the aspiring writer or like working writer community of like, what's a normal chapter length? And I don't know. Like, I think I usually try to aim for like 2,000 or 3,000. But then with this most recent book that I turned in, they were like, one was like, it was just an 8,000 word scene. And I was like, I don't know how to fix it. So, okay. It really just like, it depends so much book to book. And I think especially as you write more and as you work more with story, your instinct about where to stop, it just like gets better and better. And so like, if you want to stop. It's a great place. I trust you.
Yeah. And Karen, I feel like you have to be really intentional, especially when you're using so many different narrators.
I actually am. I mean, I think about it a lot about how to end chapters. And I have this goal that if you're reading and you're thinking to yourself, I'm just going to read one more chapter and then I'm going to go to bed, I don't want you to do that. I want to leave you in a place where you're like, well, now I have to keep going. So I do think a lot. And a lot of it is because it's multi-POV too. So you think, okay, can I take this character like right to the edge of something? And you can't wait to find out what they know or what they're thinking. And then I switch and I go to somebody else, and you've just got to keep going because you need to see what happens. And then you do the same thing with that character. So, I think varying degrees of success, some cliffhangers are more compelling than others, but I do think about it.
And switching gears a bit, I found it really lovely and interesting that with all of your books that are maybe not, people wouldn't expect to be like really funny, have such light and funny moments to them. Even with Rory, your novel, like Graham, I find so funny and kind of campy in a way. And
I'm just I think she's funny too.
Yes. And with Camryn, I just feel like the friends are so amazing and every character is funny in some way. And Karen just Knox is hilarious and just like one of my favorite characters ever. But how do you introduce a little levity into your novels? And is that something that you feel like you have to do either for the reader or for yourself? Anyone can go first.
I mean, for me, I think that's just my voice. I have a light tone, but I write about dark subjects. And that was actually something with my first book. I wondered, am I hitting the right balance here? Because this is very serious. I want to be respectful, but also these are kids. They're intelligent, they're interesting, sometimes they're funny. And how do I strike that balance? But for me, I mean, the way I've always sort of like dealt with tragedy and with hard things is through humor. And so it was very natural for me to inject that into my book as well.
Yeah, I think I think my natural writing voice tends toward darker / more solemn, but I think it also I enjoy gallows humor quite a bit. So I think when it makes its way in, the kind of humor I like is like, are you kidding me right now? This is happening and you're saying this to me. And especially with the character that you mentioned, Graham, who is like she insists on things being a certain way, even when it's like, there's a whole lot of other shit going on. And she's like, it's like, really? We're doing this now? You're like still setting the table when like the corn's on fire. So that's the stuff that I love where it just doesn't make sense. But I'm in such awe of writers who can really like craft a well done joke. I think that's so difficult. And especially like Camryn and Karen, who can put these moments so seamlessly into these narratives that also hold so much like earnestness and seriousness to them. So I just think that's amazing. And hopefully I'd like to get better at it myself.
I think for me, I spent so much time on, this is probably not a good thing, but I spent so much time on online spaces and social media, like Twitter and Tumblr and all of that since I was younger. So I feel like that has sort of molded into my voice. And a lot of it, especially now, is like weird humor while horrible things are happening. We can see that on Twitter, like right at this moment. And I feel like that's just my voice, like Karen says.
Yeah, just so many funny characters in your novel, Karen. Pops and Dad, and just like even in group where the kids who have HIV come together, just how hilarious they all can be, and they're not just like self-serious about everything. They're just kids. It's so great. And also, I think this is also very clear in all three of your novels, but secrets don't always have to be bad or shameful. Like, have you ever considered that a character's secret was their power or, kind of their source of strength? Any of you? About Camryn.
I nodded and then I was like, wait.
That's a hard one.
I think, it's interesting with Simone in my book because she's keeping the secret, but at the same time, she doesn't think she should be ashamed or embarrassed or anything about her. I think I'm frozen.
Oh, well, we can hear you still. No.
Am I frozen?
Oh,
No,
no,
you're
you're
good. You're
good.
good. You're good.
Okay. I will repeat what I said. But I basically think it's interesting with my main character because, oh my God, I keep freezing.
No, you're good. You're good on our end.
Oh, no. No.
Oh.
We lose her?
Oh no. I feel like we can hear her though. But anyway.
I feel like this is what it must feel like.
Here she is.
I feel like when people are like, what would it be like to die? And you still hear people talking about you. Like, this is what it's like. I hear everyone whispering, like, I think I should her. Maybe someone else should go for her.
No, I love it. We could have told so many secrets.
True.
Yeah. How about you, Rory?
Yeah, I think there's something powerful about like the decision to keep something private or keep something for yourself, as well as there's something equally powerful about not like if you were feeling ashamed to decide not to. So I think there's opportunities to explore both of that in fiction. I think for me, I tend to like the latter, sort of deciding that like, you know what, this doesn't have to be something that like I hold inside and like agonize over. But I think there's something really moving about someone deciding like, hey, you know what, this is like, nobody else has to know about it because it means the same thing for me.
Yeah.
That was a very strange answer, but whatever.
No, I loved it. And Karen, anything to add?
Yeah, I'd say, when One of Us is next, there are two characters who share a secret and it gets out and they're embarrassed, but they shouldn't be. I mean, they're only embarrassed because of some harmful norms that they've internalized. And really, they were in that situation because of the enormous respect and affection and honesty they had for each other. And so ultimately, even though they have to go through some stuff to get there, it makes their friendship stronger, and it gives them really the power to work through this mystery that they're trying to solve together. So it's one of those things where, the relationship was at the core of the story between these two people, and it became better, once they were fully honest with each other.
Yeah. And Camryn, just to react to my own question, since we didn't get to hear all of your answers, that no, what I loved in full disclosure about this question is Simone, she was keeping her secret for a good reason because she had been burned by it before. But it also is a way for people to, when she does choose on her terms, hopefully, it is a great way to become closer to her friends, even if they don't react perfectly at first. But
I think maybe this is a bit cliche, but it is similar to me to coming out, where she shouldn't be expected to share it. It might not be safe for her to share it, but when she does, her friends are super awkward and kind of weird, but also really earnest. And I feel like that's been my experience. I'm lucky to have that experience, but I wanted to reflect that.
And another thing that all three of you do so well in your novels, which I imagine would be one of the hardest things, is when everything comes together and there's that reckoning towards the end where a lie or a secret comes to light. And tell me how you think about writing that moment. Is writing that moment really emotionally loaded for you? And do you like writing that moment, or do you prefer writing the lead up where things still are in the dark? Anyone want to go first?
I love writing that moment. It's one of my favorite parts. And I feel like I'm sort of working toward it for the whole book. And for me, I think a lot about where are people when this comes out, what's the setting? And the Cousins, which of course it's not out yet, but there's this sort of big reveal at one point, and I wanted it to be really dramatic. So they're at a party and they're in tuxedos and a ball gown, and there's people all around watching this drama unfold. Whereas for One of Us is Next, when the character's secrets come out, we're not in their point of view. We don't see their reaction initially. We see other people's reaction. And for me, that was kind of like the core of, almost the cruelty of this game, is that your story is just put out there for other people to react to. And then we see, how you react to their reaction. So it was a very different type of reveal.
Yeah. Rory. Yes.
I kind of dread it writing that part, because I feel like I need to have more answers at that point than I usually do by the time I get there, and then I have to pause and be like, wait, what was I talking about again? So it's a lot of pressure, definitely, but I try to approach it in terms of like, what is the way of finding this out that is going to be most impactful for my main character, whether it's like who they're hearing it from, or where they are, or like what manner they're discovering it in. So I try to think about like what's going to make it the worst moment of that person's life, like in every way possible. But then that feels like a lot of pressure, so I overthink it and I get nervous. Don't like it.
I like it a lot. Like Karen, it's like what I'm writing toward, and it's super dramatic for me. I'm like, yes, there's spotlights, and she's going to make a dramatic speech, and everyone's going to cry, and all the readers are going to cry, and it's going to be iconic. And that's how I feel when I'm writing it. I'm like super pumped, and it probably doesn't turn out that way, especially when I'm writing a first draft. It's probably really bad, but that's what gets me through.
No, it's so satisfying to read that moment too. Like you feel that adrenaline, from the writing. And also just like the resolution, like what I've like really noticed about Karen, your work, is that like you spend a lot of pages on the resolution, after that moment,
Yeah.
And it's so satisfying. Do you feel that way too? Or do you feel like, oh, okay, now I just have to like knit everything up? Or is that exciting to you too?
Yeah, it's funny when I do outline, and when I outline, I'm always like, and that's the ending and that's it, it's done. But what I find is when I get there, it's like there's so much more for the characters to experience, to have a true resolution, that there's like more to their story that happens after, like, the big moment that resolves everything. So I tend to have everybody, have that sort of closing chapter where they're in their new normal, they've kind of learned their lessons, they're maybe starting new relationships, or they've ended old ones, and we get a glimpse of what the world's going to be like for them going forward.
Yeah. So next I have a fun question and it's kind of a story time question. So in literature, especially YA and middle grade, there's such a trope of secret writing, like a diary entry or a past note or a blog post or a text becoming public. And I think every writer has had an experience like this when they were teens or, younger adults. Do you have any experiences from your childhood or teen years that you're willing to share where writing a secret has gotten you into trouble? And like, what did it teach you about the power of committing truth to writing? Huge question, but I hope it's kind of fun. But yeah, anyone?
In the third grade, I used to write on slips of paper and leave them in my desk. And I wrote something that I can't repeat here because it was very inappropriate. And I was 8, or no, I was 10. And I came back from recess and my teacher had them all spread out on her desk and was like, "What is this?" And I was like, this is personal. And it was just literally like a list of like all the students I hated and how annoying I thought they were and how they were the worst. And she was like, "I can't believe someone like you would do this," because I was so quiet and I was just writing about hating everyone. So I learned that if I want to write about how much I hate people, I should do that in the privacy of my own home.
Or make it fiction.
Fiction, change the names, yeah.
No, that's great.
I remembered one. I think I was in like second grade or something, like first or second grade. And we had these like vocabulary books with like quizzes and like lists of words that we had to memorize or whatever. And we had to turn them in every week. And I lost mine. And so instead of just being like, hey, I lost it, can I have another one? I told my mom that my teacher stole it and that she wouldn't give it back and that I didn't understand why. And then in my diary, because I had one like with the little lock, I wrote, I didn't actually, like, she didn't actually steal it. I lost it because the guilt was just too much for my tiny brain. And my mom found it and was like, yeah, no shit, I knew that. Like, let's just ask for another one and maybe apologize for accusing your teacher of theft, you dumbass. Okay. Sorry.
That's so great. Karen.
So I don't really have a moment like that. What I would do is I would like write stuff that I had made up, that was complete fabrication, but it was sort of like, it had real people in it, especially when I was a kid, because I didn't, know how to make up characters. And I would leave that lying around and my mother would look at it and be like, your brother did what? And I'd be like, no, it's just like, I made it up. So I think I was just always, writing down fiction from a very young age. And that was the kind of stuff that I was careless with.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
See, all my fiction at that age was Redwall knockoffs. So they had like talking mice and
Yeah.
nobody was about to be like, is this real? They're like, okay, weirdo.
Oh gosh. I feel like I was writing like a lot of like, even at the age of like 5, like homoerotic fan fiction.
You knew what you wanted. You were
Exactly.
committed.
I always had like a vaguely queer character, like a girl who just like wore combat boots and like fringe vests and like didn't talk to anyone. And she was just always there. Like she served no purpose. She would just lurk in the back.
She was just there for like baby queer brain to like look at.
Literally.
Be like, hello.
Yeah, and there's always the issue when you're younger of like how to dispose of this certain writing. Like I would literally try to pulp paper and like under hot water and then like throw it in the trash can or the toilet.
You went the
It was
extra
just
mile.
like, yeah, I know.
Make sure no one can discover it.
Yeah, and now we put it in real books. So, here's a fun one, but that you get asked like all the time. But what are you reading and loving, if you are able to read right now?
Oh, I was reading this right before. Oh, I forgot how cameras work, so you probably can't read the title. It's called Sassafras, Cypress, and Indigo. It's by Ntozake Shange. She passed away a few years ago, but she wrote For Colored Girls.
Oh.
And it's super cool and witchy, and it's like Little Women, but with Black girls and lots of like scary murder powers. Not murder, but fun witchy powers. It's great.
That sounds
That's
so
awesome. I just finished Star Eater by Kirsten Hall, which is coming out in June, I think, of next year. It's adult fantasy about the way it was pitched to me, which sold it to me, was that it's about matriarchal cannibal nuns. So I was like, cool, I'm on board.
good.
Love that. That's all I needed. So hopefully that's all you will need. But I also am just like consistently in love with Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas. I just think it's an incredible book. It's such an interesting version / take on dark academia. And it's like The Secret History plus Never Let Me Go plus like neither of those. It's just, I think it's incredibly well done.
Wow. You sold me so hard on those.
She's so good.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And also matriarchal cannibal nuns. I would not be surprised if like you wrote something, of that ilk.
I mean, that's like, they were like, you will like this. It's like, oh, surprise. I did.
How about you, Karen?
I feel like this has been a really great year for young adult mysteries and thrillers. I've read a bunch that I love, and a couple recent releases that were great were Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson.
Yes.
So good. And Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. And I also just finished reading a book called That Weekend, which is Kara Thomas's latest. That's coming out next summer, and it was amazing. So my peers are just constantly impressing me.
Oh, so much to read. Like, are any of your piles getting ridiculous?
Oh, yeah.
I gave up. I
Yeah.
just
Pile them up on my bed because there's just not room.
Yeah. I think you can see right here a very tall, this is like literally my bedside table, but like, yeah, that's just like a small fraction.
That's about what mine looks like.
Yeah. And I've been watching the home edit on Netflix, and I'm just like, maybe all my problems would be solved if I arranged them all in rainbow color order.
I can tell you it doesn't do it. I did that and nothing happened.
All right. So my final question, it's kind of like a dreaded question, but I feel like I need to ask it. And you can be very serious about this, or you can just be like completely like silly about this. But I feel like, okay, so 2020, horrible year. How has it affected your writing, if at all?
See, I feel like I got lucky at the beginning of all this with timing because I had just turned in my 5th book. And so it was off my plate. And then when I got edits back, I already knew the characters in the world. And so it wasn't that hard to concentrate. But recently I have started something new and it is a slog, man. I second guess myself all the time. I'll be 3 chapters in and think, this character needs to be a guy, not a girl. And I'll change the whole thing. And I'm like, what was I thinking? No, that's all wrong. And I'm doing that with almost every element of this book. And I'm finding it very hard to concentrate. So that's how it's going for me.
I hear you.
Yeah, I have started and scrapped so many different stories that it's just horrible. And what always happens is I'll tweet about it or I'll tell everyone and I'm like, I'm doing really great. And then the next week they ask me about it and I'm like, please don't speak of it because I just have gone through so many. It's really horrible. I don't know how to fix it.
We'll find a way, I'm sure.
I have had the delight of being on deadline the whole pandemic, the whole thing. So, and the way I unfortunately work, in which I'm hoping to not work this way forever, but instead of revising, I just rewrite the whole thing from nothing. So it's been like, I've written 3 books since March, basically. And it's just, I feel like you can really, I imagine it's this way for a lot of people, that you can really just see like the specific anxieties of each sort of like 2-month chunk showing up in the work. And it's hard sometimes to feel like the writing is important enough to justify spending my time on it, because there's just so much else that we could be doing and that needs being done. And so it's sort of been tricky for me to balance like making sure I'm not keeping my head in the sand and focused on my writing so much that I'm neglecting everything else that I need to be doing, but making sure that I'm also remembering that like art matters and that what I'm writing hopefully will matter to someone. Mm-hmm. But it's just a hard moment, and I'm really wary of like getting sucked in too much to the writing and the nitty-gritty, when like, no, what I need to be doing is like community outreach and like voter registration programs and soliciting donations and having hard conversations with family members. Like there's just so much else that seems really like important right now. So it's been a tough balance, but I think one that requires handling. So
yeah. And really though, while, getting involved in like, so more important things is obviously like our priority. Books and escape are still so important and have been to so many of us. And even if it's a dishy novel filled with secrets that doesn't seem to have anything to do with the moment, it really can, and it can really help so many of us. And as I'm looking through, our reader comments, we actually didn't really get many questions, but everyone's just saying that like their TBRs are like mine is nothing compared to theirs. Like, this is such like a great time to read and such a great year for new books. So I really thank you guys for, writing such great stuff, and also so excited for what's coming. Well, can we like briefly end by like saying, what we can expect next, if there is anything that you can share, or a little bit more than you already have. So Karen, I know you're next novel is coming so soon, but just any little teases.
Yeah, The Cousins is coming December 1st, 2020. So it's really getting close. And that is the story of three cousins, surprise, surprise, who are visiting their grandmother for the very first time after she had disinherited their parents many years ago. They think they're going to her island resort for one reason. It turns out they're there for something very different. And I've also am working on my fifth book, which will be coming out next fall, and that's called You'll Be the Death of Me. And I like to call that Ferris Bueller's Day Off meets a murder mystery.
Gosh, so good. And Rory, the ice book.
Yeah, The World Ends Here is coming out sometime next fall. It is kind of like Interstellar meets a different comp that we haven't figured out yet. There's no space, no like father-daughter relationship, but it like vibes like Interstellar. I don't know. It's about two ex-girlfriends who were born and raised at this like remote icy research center, and they discover what their parents have been working on and both have to grapple with it in their own way. And then in spring of 2022, I have an adult fantasy book coming out, which is called In a Garden Burning Gold. And it's about like a powerful family in a fantasy version of Northern Greece. Like I knocked off like one letter of the city that that my family's from. I was like, cool, I did it.
In May, my second book's coming out, and it's called Off the Record, and I'm trying to use comp titles like Karen did, Ferris Bueller Murder Mystery. Mine is like Almost Famous meets something. It's about a teen journalist.
You don't always have to have the next one figured out. It's all good.
I'm not. It's not my, but it's about a teen journalist who uncovers a sexual assault scandal.
Oh, that sounds so good.
That was sad.
No.
I promise I feel like calling it fun is kind of like messed up, but it is fun.
Mm-hmm. No, we all need fun. And also, for the record, I would love to read those like just started and unfinished beginnings of stories that you have. There should be a genre of unfinished, pandemic writing.
Oh, God.
But anyway. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. I think we're out of time. And thank you all for joining. Please buy everyone's books, please, from the link from Greenlight Bookstore. Here they all are, gorgeous. They're full of secrets. That's what I'm agreeing.
So many.
But anyway, thank you so much. It was so great talking to all of you.
Thank you for moderating.
Great talking to you too.
All right. I think we're done.